Welcome back to our podcast, From A to Franchisee. And today we're going to be looking at franchises that are in the child enrichment area. So we are trying to just kind of give people that have maybe honed in on what area they might be more interested in a better idea of what it's like to actually be a franchisee in that industry or that segment of franchising. We're going to speak to franchisees from all different kinds of brands and industries to tell their story and want to give you an idea of what it was like for them to find their franchise and then to be in that business. When you think about the franchise space, if you're like most people, I think our brains automatically go to food, fitness, or services. That tends to be something that we see out on the streets a lot. But one category that makes a very large impact on local communities is around child enrichment. From sports and STEM programs to art and after-school activities, these franchises focus on helping kids build confidence, creativity, and healthy habits. Franchisees can make a living while doing something very meaningful in their communities. Today, we're taking a closer look at this space through the lens of Amazing Athletes, a mobile sports and fitness franchise that brings structured programs to schools and child care centers. We'll talk with Amazing Athletes franchisees about what drew them to the child enrichment sector, what their day-to-day looks like, and the realities of balancing business ownership with a mission-driven mindset. Whether you're a parent, educator, or aspiring franchise owner, this episode will give you a behind-the-scenes look at what it's really like to succeed in a world of child enrichment franchising. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Supriya and Vik, who own Amazing Athletes in San Jose. Welcome to the podcast, and thanks so much for being part of the conversation.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Michelle.
Michelle.
We're so happy to be here.
Yeah, and we'll start by you are a husband and wife that are in this business together, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about when you became owners of Amazing Athletes. And I would like to know what you were both doing before Amazing Athletes. And then if you can tell us a little bit about how you landed on Amazing Athletes.
Absolutely. So we became official franchise owners in November of 2023. So we're just hitting 2-year anniversary this month, which is really
Congratulations.
exciting. Thank
Yeah.
you. And time has really flown by, so it's hard to believe that it's been 2 years already, and we are where we're at this point in time. So before this, I spent 12 years as a pharmacist. I was a retail pharmacy manager. That was my entire career. My life was built around that. And in 2022, we had our third child. And so at that point, we had 3 kids under the age of 5, and managing the pharmacy manager lifestyle at the same time as raising a family became very, very difficult because I did not have much flexibility in my schedule. And so that's when Vic stepped in and he said, "Hey, we need to make some kind of change. We got to figure out what we're doing next."
For me, my background is in tech sales and engineering. I was already focused on solving complex problems, but mainly coming from the corporate world. It was spreadsheets, building revenue, sales pipeline, and customers. And also being in Silicon Valley, always had this entrepreneurial itch, and finally decided to take a bet on ourselves and said we have to take a chance on ourselves to go use that same problem-solving spirit to build something meaningful, not only for us, but for families and for kids. And that's how we stumbled upon Amazing Athletes.
So were you familiar with franchising as a model, or did you think you were going to create a business by yourself to start initially?
When we moved from Michigan to Silicon Valley, I had already, so many ideas. I had actually launched a book by then. I had written Ketchup and Curry to help people immigrate and assimilate into the country. I was working on so many different ideas. I'd start a website called justmeditate.com to help people meditate and overcome ADHD and find calmness in their lives. There's so many different ideas that I wanted to pursue, but I realized it lacked a little bit of structure and process and mentoring. So it was always a lot of 0 to 1 effort, which again, in Silicon Valley, 100,000 ideas are born every year and 0.1% survive. But it still, it motivated us to move here to pursue something on our own. But the franchise model is when, after leading sales for a few years, is when it hit me that, we needed a good product and we can't be taking chances on ideas, which take a little longer to, build momentum, but also something that's already defined as a brand that's personal, that's also meaningful for us, and the impact from a combination of us raising kids to creating that opportunity for other families to build that community around us. So all of this came together. So until maybe 2022, it was focused on building our own ideas.
Hmm.
But in 23, after going through a lot of startups in the Valley, where I was working in a lot of different startups, and I realized how it was, sometimes painful to get products off the ground. I realized that going after a known existing model, an existing franchise model that could be successful, has found success in other states, and as a nationwide has already built a brand, has a reputation that we can then build and grow into. That's essentially how that mindset changed. And then once we found amazing athletes, we went all in, and then we were able to build that out.
So I love this too, because I think that a lot of times I get asked the question about an entrepreneur versus a franchisee. And so some people will say you're one or the other. And I do think that you've done a great job of kind of explaining that it is both. It is both in that you have to have that passion and that drive. And you nailed it with you wanted more structure, you wanted that mentorship or that kind of more support along the way. So those were really great. So, did you work with a broker, or did anyone help you land upon amazing athletes, or what was your research process like? Did you know from the start you wanted something within child services?
Soup, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so this is really funny because Vic is when he starts his research, he goes into a rabbit hole. He will do research night and day till he finds the perfect fit. And so when we first started talking about, okay, I need to get out of the pharmacy world, we need to find something else, to support our income and for me to continue working, but at the same time being able to raise our family, he started doing his research. And every day he would come with ideas, new franchises, different business startup ideas. Every single night he'd say he'd have a list of 10 to 15 things we'd have to go through, but nothing clicked. Um, I would always play devil's advocate and I say, "Oh, this won't work." And Vic is a very big risk taker. He's very ambitious. He's all about taking the risks, and I'm not. I'm not a big risk taker, and I think that's a good balance for our relationship because he flies away with his ideas, and I sort of anchor him down back to reality. And so when he stumbled upon Amazing Athletes and he talked to me about it, he said, "I think I found the one. I think this is it. I think you'll really love it." And the reason that it clicked for both of us was because we already had 3 young kids of our own. We were always looking for programs to enroll them into. And they were at that preschool age where we really couldn't find anything to enroll them into. You had to be at least 5 or above to join a lot of these sports programs. And we had a 3-year-old who was very athletic, and we couldn't find anything to really enroll him into besides gymnastics. And so he said, I have a call set up with Amazing Athletes, with Youth Athletes United. Jump on this call and let's just do the call and see where it goes. And within the first call, we were both just so interested in the program. We
Yeah,
wanted to learn more.
yeah.
We're like, this is amazing. Why haven't we seen this before? Why don't we have this here? We need this in our community. And so that's really what kind of kickstarted the process for us to get involved.
I love it. Okay.
Right.
So you knew that you needed something to fit your lifestyle. So once you kind of started working with amazing athletes, how did you vet that this was the right fit because you had such specific criteria of what you were looking to do with how you were changing your lifestyle? How did you go through that and figure
Yeah.
out that this was a good
So, California has a high cost of living,
fit? Hmm.
and also running a storefront and being tied down to a storefront, which Supriya already was as a pharmacist. So when coming out of that lifestyle, we knew that we didn't want to be tied to a storefront 12 hours a day, opening and closing and managing that end of the realm. And when we looked at multiple franchise models, we did fitness, education, food, and so on. But what stood out with Amazing Athletes was, how flexible and family friendly it was. And for us as parents, flexibility was huge.
Yeah.
And we wanted Supriya to be able to have time for school pickups, activities around our own kids. And how do we grow this business around our family's rhythm and not the other way around? So that kind of worked.
Okay. So, do you feel like when you were talking to them and they were telling you about what it was going to be like to run the business, did they set you up to have a really good expectation of what it would be like once you were up and running the business?
Right. When I was the first to go into training in New York for a week a couple of years ago, And when we went in with an open mind, saying, okay, and the what led to the training was a lot of, we both engaged with a lot of franchisees in different markets, so we understood their pain points, what worked, what didn't, how they scaled, how they brought in coaches, how did they go into schools. But still, what was different for me personally was I'm coming in from tech sales. It's solving problems at a, like how urgent is a problem? Are people willing to pay for it? And is it scalable, ubiquitous? And those same models could be applied here, but then it wasn't as it was a lot more soft. The sale, it wasn't, it's not like sales, right? It's more where we're adding value to the schools and creating a benefit for the kids and creating a difference and an impact at all of these schools. So, but going into this training, doing a lot of role playing activities and things like that, it kind of first opened our mind into how to communicate with the coaches, how to communicate with the schools, the staff, the directors, and then the kids. But also, what led the whole process was all of the franchisees told us about their journey and helped us quite a bit on how to for us to scale and learn through the process.
Yeah, I think that's really key. I don't know um, how to get a better idea of what it's like to run the day to day than to ask the people that are doing it. I love that you talk about they prep you on how, because you have a lot of people that you guys are working with, making happy, and selling to, that there's a lot of parts of that. So let's go into what that day to day is. It looks like. Do you both do the same thing, or do you divide and conquer your roles in the business? And then tell me what your day to day looks like.
We definitely divide and conquer. So Vic is
Okay.
actually still working his full-time tech sales job. He still works
Okay.
full-time and helps manage the business. So I run day-to-day operations, and we've hired a few wonderful coaches who our primary one, we promoted him into program manager, and he leads our staff and trainings and things like that. So he does a lot of the day-to-day as well. We work together on sales. So initially we did a lot of our sales together, which we still do. Business strategy and growth we work on together. I do a lot of the customer service, so talking to parents, sending feedback about the children and how they're doing, managing the coaches, the quality of the program. And then Vic handles a lot of the sales and operations. Like if you want to kind of get into your
Yeah,
role.
I do a lot of the back end sales KPIs. How are we building the schools, the programs, new partnerships, marketing, and planning around how do we, demos and scheduling demos, and essentially looking at quarter over quarter. Similar to the sales quotas
Yeah.
in tech sales. I'm just bringing that over to amazing athletes to run it in a very similar way. But then together, Supriya and I, we do review of the business on a daily basis. And our most important KPI, besides all the sales talk, is going to be the parents' feedback. So when we always are figuring out, are parents happy, satisfied? Do they see results? And are their kids happy in the program? And making sure that they're growing at the pace that the program is creating, and so on.
Yeah, I think it's just a unique thing about child services where your customer is the child, but it's also the parent,
Hmm.
and you need to make sure that the happiness or the support they feel in your program is translating to the parents wanting to keep renewing that business with you. So that's interesting. And Vic, you also, I think, really embody what we keep saying about franchise owners is, I've been doing this for 20 years with Franchise Business Review. And 20 years ago, the franchisee that came on board with a brand was really passionate about the service or the product, but didn't have the business acumen that you're speaking to understand, what does that growth look like for us as far as programs, and having a really good understanding of that. So I love that you have both of those aspects, where you have more of the day-to-day operations, but also you're keeping an eye on what does it look like to keep growing this. So that's amazing that you could share that with us. How many people, and it sounds like, Supriya, you're really running the day-to-day. How many coaches are you managing, or what did that scaling look like? Were you able to do this on your own at first, or did you really need to bring in coaches immediately so you could focus on the business?
So we actually coached the first few months on our own because we really wanted to learn the program so that we could train our coaches. So when Vic came back from training from New York in November 2 years ago, we actually started coaching at my son's preschool. We just asked their school if we could do some free classes for their kids, and they said, of course. And so we just went in there with the curriculum and we would do classes on our own. And that's kind of how we started getting experience for the month of December. In January, we started at our first school, and Vic and I were coaching there, and we got very lucky. Within our first month, we found our phenomenal coach Corey, who signed on with us, and he was a former PE teacher. And he had brought a lot of great ideas and background to the program. And so he started coaching some of our classes and doing our demos with us. So we would go out and do it together. So it was just the three of us for a few months. And then within the first 6 months, we had about three coaches that were hired. We were still also coaching and doing sales. And fast forward to today, we have 15 coaches on staff. Vic and I don't coach anymore. We focus more on the growth and strategy for the business. So we really tried to remove ourselves from being on the field pretty quickly so that we could scale the business. And that's why we're where we're at today. So if there's one piece of advice that I could give to future franchisees, it's, hire the right people quickly and get yourself out of the field so you can really focus on growth.
Yeah, I
But
think
we
that's a
got really
great piece
lucky.
of advice. A great piece of advice.
Mhm.
Yeah. Did you have something else to contribute there?
No, that's all.
Okay, I think that
Yeah.
that is a common thing is that you get out of delivering the product or service so you can focus on taking care of your people and growing your staff so that you can grow the business. That's great.
Yeah.
How about I think, and I'm going to kind of lead you, but how about the way that you build relationships in your community? How are you going about doing that? And how essential is that to retaining your current programs and customers, but also in finding new ones?
Yeah. So I would say consistency and patience. We want to be dependable, accountable. We show up, and not just for classes, but for community events. We do school fairs, parent nights. We sponsor a lot of events at the school because some schools are, they don't have the funds,
Uh-huh.
and we're already, we see we're close relationship with all the PTA communities, and we see some of the activities that goes on in these schools, and we say, how do we help? So that's our first question. Where we start with how can we help, and then everything else kind of follows through. And then where that leads us to is we want people to see us as partners, not just vendors.
Yeah, that's great.
I agree. I think building relationships with the schools is the key to success in this business. You have to show up. Um, you can't just and when it's say showing up, it's like Vic and I show up. As
Yeah.
the owners of the business, we personally go and talk to the directors. We meet with the staff. We observe classes. We meet with parents. Yes, our coaches are also there, but for parents to see the owners of the business out there, they see the passion that drives us day to day, and they invest more in our program because of that. So that's the key to this business and being successful is building those relationships and like Vic said, consistency and patience as well.
Yeah, I think that you can't just rely on marketing or sales. It is that they need to know who you are and what is this business to the community. So that's great. So we've talked about a lot of great things that you guys are doing in the business and what you do day to day. I'd love to hear what's your biggest challenge that you face, and it's not necessarily specific to being a franchisee in child services, but just as a business owner, what is the biggest challenge that you guys feel like you're facing this year?
I would say probably one of the challenges that's just consistent across the board is staffing,
Hmm.
because this is a part-time job for coaches, right? We coach preschools in the mornings from let's say 9:30 to 11:30. There's a break because all the kids take a nap, have lunch, and then we do some after school programs. So it's you don't really get a full day of an 8-hour workday. So staffing is always tricky because you have to figure out how to retain these coaches who may only be working 4 to 5 hours a week. And living in the Bay Area, which is very high cost of living, it's difficult to find someone to do that and pay them at a rate where you can still see your profits, but pay them something that, they can also be able to pay their bills. So I think staffing is our biggest challenge. We recently expanded our territory late last year. And so that was the staffing was the main thing is just we have all these new schools now. How do we get coaches into these schools? And we want to be dependable. we try to avoid canceling or rescheduling any classes. So we always have backup coaches. And so really we overhire to overcome that challenge. We overhire and we double staff at school. So if someone calls off, we have the ability to send someone over to another school. I would say that's our biggest challenge. Vic, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think running a business, raising kids, and managing staffing and the overall, schools that are being brought up and the parent communication. Because when you see each school has, tens of kids registered, and when we hear immediately when the kid's not, joining, attending a class, or the kid's missing a class, or the kid's not happy about something, and then the parent gets involved, right? Parents are very emotionally charged about this program, and we love it. But definitely, we're always, managing time and resilience on keeping up with all of these different aspects of it.
Yeah, and I would say the staffing challenges is something that we hear across the board. It
Mhm.
is a hard one to solve. About how many programs or how many kids are you running? I think you said with 15 coaches?
Yep. So we're in about 80 locations, and we probably have around 700 kids enrolled currently.
Yeah, that's a lot. So do you have tools that you're getting from your franchisor that help you manage those communications and just kind of keep tabs on
Yes.
all of these programs? Okay, so that's an important part of managing all of that. The next thing I want to ask is you mentioned expanding into new territory, which is fantastic. Congratulations. Can we
Thank you.
talk about what your investment was when you got started? And you can share a range. I know that Amazing Athletes is available on our site, so listeners can go there and see that. But you can either talk about it in dollars, but I'm more interested in how long did it take before you felt like you either broke even or that you were
Mhm.
stable in the business?
Right. So the startup costs were reasonable compared to other franchises. The reason it's a mobile model, so no huge upfront cost in terms of a rent or a build out. And we've evaluated a lot of those franchises too, and it's definitely this is a lot lower upfront costs. So and we started lean, focused on quality and relationship building, and gained traction because it's a 0 to 1. We acquired new territories, and we believed in their FDD, their where they initially shared some of the projections, and they also shared, all these other owners' contacts that we could talk to, and we understood how fast an ROI is. In our case, we actually won Rookie of the Year for the fastest growing new franchise or in the country. So
Right.
for us, that was ROI in itself, but it
Yeah.
also showed that we were able to recover all our costs in year one.
Wow, that's
And
fantastic.
that gave us a lot of confidence to go add more schools, more staff, buy new equipment, and also expand our territory. We also started buying additional complementary. It's they say multiple franchises within the brand of Youth Athletes United. So we ended up acquiring Soccer Stars as well, and started expanding our territory where it was initially till only in the Bay Area till Mountain View and Palo Alto, and then we expanded to Redwood City on one side, and then the other side, we took it from Milpitas, Fremont to the East Bay in Dublin, Pleasanton, Livermore, and Tracy. So we now have a huge region. Again, now balancing that with commute time,
Mm.
traffic congestion, and then still managing a wide area is now the new challenge that we're setting up ourselves for. But back to your question of ROI, it's been definitely cash on cash and return on investment. We were able to recoup most of our investment in year one. And since then, we've actually reinvested those proceeds into buying and building out the franchise and building out the territories to make sure that we found our passion. We found a crossroads of form, fit, and passion where we're able to serve the community, make an impact, and see a reward for this whole process. So we said, this is where we need to place more bets, double down
Mhm.
on ourselves, and then build more into it. And the entire Amazing Athletes team, John, Jared, Adam, they've been fantastic supporting us in this whole process of expansion. But also, they say sometimes walk before you run. Sometimes they also slow us down and say, have you made sure you looked into a few different areas? That way, they're applying, not, they're just applying a little more speed bumps to before we scale or go with rapid expansion.
Yeah, which is great because they have more experience in seeing this. So I think looking
Hmm.
for a franchisor that doesn't push you to overbuy in the beginning and talks about that kind of scaling is a great indicator that they're really going to be a good partner to help you assess that. And the other side, I think sometimes franchisees can get a little nervous about that expansion. So you want to have that balance of like, you guys are running a very great program in your geography. It does make sense to add on. So those are great questions to ask other franchisees, how the
Right.
franchisor is supporting that. I also too, and I didn't say it when Supriya brought it up, but I think I noticed when I talk to franchisees, most couples have the person that's a little bit more risk averse or conservative, and the person that's like, let's bet it all. So I
Yeah,
think it's also a good balance for business.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything that you wish you'd known before buying a franchise that you would share with the audience, that advice you would give them or things to think about that you didn't know before you ran the business?
Honestly, just how rewarding it would be. I mean, it was a big risk for me to take, right? To leave my full-time job. That's all I had known for 12, 13 years. And I was so scared to do that. We went in thinking this will be a fun business, but honestly, it's been life changing. Seeing your work directly impact kids on a day to day basis, that's something really special. And also, the how powerful the franchise community is. Um, Talking to other owners, learning from them early is key. This is a rinse and repeat situation. A lot of the problems that we faced, other franchise owners have faced in the past, and there are solutions to them. So it's really one of the biggest advantages of being a part of the franchise network.
Yeah, I agree with that. And some franchisees I don't think tap into that network as much as they could. So that's fantastic that you've made those connections in your community. Do you feel like your franchisor has helped you foster those relationships with your franchisees? Are they getting you together or are you connected virtually?
Absolutely. So at training, Vic, when you went to the initial training, Vic met a lot of new franchisees there. And then we have a Slack channel that we use that we can connect with other franchisees all the time. And the franchisor is always connecting us with people. Whenever we have a
That's
question, they say, "Oh, so and so went through this problem. Let me connect you with them. You can talk with them." We have conferences every other year. I went to our first conference in December this past year, and met a lot of people at that conference. So they really do a lot to help you connect, and that's one of their biggest drivers. And I think that has helped us succeed as well. They also offer business success coaches. So when you sign on, you can have a business success coach. And shout out to Cindy Taylor, who's our success coach, and she has helped so much in guiding and mentoring and getting us through those challenges. So yes, we do have a lot of support from the franchisor.
love
Absolutely.
that. Love that. Vic, is there anything else that you'd add to what you wish you knew before you buy, or just how your network or how your franchisor is really supporting you in your success that you guys have seen within a child service
You
franchise?
know, uh, we the we wish we had started sooner.
Yeah.
I think, but also in a positive way, coming out of COVID, giving us that time to think through all these ideas. We were here in California in Silicon Valley. We moved our entire family, put ourselves in this place to, really pursue entrepreneurship. So like really going after an idea where that's meaningful to you. So in this case, I think the structure, the system, the back end, the community that they have, and they have tools already in place too. When they said initially the franchise cost includes tech fees, I was concerned because being in Silicon Valley, I'm used to speed. And then the first thing I see in their tools is Slack. And I'm surprised that a franchisor like is betting on their community or their franchisees to make sure they're communicating with their staff in a Slack, which is 24/7, very quick, immediate messages. And they've been very transparent with the whole process. John's been amazing. Jared's been such a fantastic, mentor to us because these are also people who've been there with amazing athletes for 10 years. They've done what we are trying to do in their respective regions and territories. They've already scaled, and there's not a single problem they haven't seen. And when we have such open Slack, the Slack allows us to communicate freely. We then schedule calls on a quarterly basis. We then have meetings, and then we've started building relationships with these others in the community. So then we're also like texting, we're having calls with them. Hey, how are you seeing in this area? So again, it's essentially the franchise model works where there's systems in place, processes in place, and then tools in place, but then the people that come together that allow all of these to be able to easily be fluid and being able to connect everyone at the same time. I think that's what makes amazing athletes a recipe for success.
I love that. So, just to wrap things up, I'll share some of our franchise business review data around child services and child enrichment franchises. The lowest scores that we see from franchisees that they report when we ask our standard questions are around technology, around marketing and promotional programs, the fees that they pay, and innovation. So I think those are some things you could ask. Those also align with what we're seeing across all industries. So this does not sit specifically for child services. We did look at that, and then the high scores. I think they mirror what you guys are saying, that they enjoy being part of the organization, they enjoy operating the business. The franchisees are supportive of each other, and that they respect the franchisor. So these things are just really mirroring what you guys are saying about your specific brand, and then looking at our overall responses from child enrichment franchisees that report, 100% of them are likely to recommend the franchise to others. So there's no negative response in child services as far as recommending it to others, and 84% are likely to invest in the business again today, knowing what they know. So just it's really great to see that. I think it is driven by a lot of passion. You do need to have the business acumen to run the business, but you have to be very connected to your communities and to learn the people that you're supporting and to support the parents of the children. It's very complex. I thank you both for joining us today. This was such a great conversation. I thank you so much. And I also love hearing your success that you're having. It sounds like you guys are growing like hotcakes.
Thank you so much. It's not just a business, it's a legacy for us. You're shaping healthier, happier kids and stronger communities. So that's a return on investment
Yes.
that's hard to measure in numbers alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you both for what you're doing in your communities, and also for helping to educate people thinking about buying a franchise to come on into franchising.
Absolutely. I'll tell you the last, parting thoughts would be passion, patience, and people skills, along with a growth mindset. If you have these four, I would say time to really think about getting into a franchise. And amazing athletes has changed our lives, and I hope it changes yours too.
I love it. I love it. And I always love when I hear, I wish we'd done it sooner. That's like the best validation you can ever hear from people. So thank you both.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Michelle.
you, Michelle.